because everything has been so different. So I know we've been talking about how even next year sophomores are also going to be going through this whole new experience of having more in-person activities and classes and everything. Like, what have you all noticed with students during the pandemic that maybe is helpful for students coming in to know that it's okay that you feel this way, or what to prepare for? Kara, do you want to start with this one?
Sure. I think it's important to recognize some of the things that you may have lost and recognize that it's okay to mourn those things or to feel sad. If your prom wasn't what you expected, if graduation wasn't what you expected, I think a lot of people in the past year and a half have experienced loss on multitude of levels. And so just being able to identify that and recognize that. But I also think being able to go into the year with some hope that there might be a different, maybe, different experiences, hopefully a sense of some normalcy, and just recognize that there's adjustment that goes along with it. And if you need support, that's what we're here for. But yeah, I definitely come back to me. I don't have more thoughts on that. Thanks.
Well, you made me think about, Kara, like the loss piece, because I've had a few clients who did have parents or grandparents, one whose grandparents both passed, and then another who's had a whole family that had COVID at different times, young ones, older ones, his parents. And the sense of hopelessness or helplessness of not being able to help, because normally this student was a first generation student and a lot was riding on his experience here, and he wanted to go home. And I worked with him and his mom. Actually, we had a 3-way conversation one time about, no, this is your role now. This is what you need to do for you, but also for us. We're expecting you to be a college student, and we support you in that. So I encourage you to think about things maybe just a little differently if you're hesitant about leaving your family, or, for those of you who are very solid rocks for some of your family members, is maybe just finding new ways in which to support them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just add that based on some information Jane actually just ran for us, and we reviewed a couple of days ago, that the top handful of things that we are aware for students who came and saw us in counseling, that students really struggled with, that they believed was kind of related to the pandemic, more so related to the pandemic, was academics, how they were functioning academically, because they might have been doing online classes for the first time, or whatever that might be. Certainly their mental health in general, just this general idea. I think, Jane, I don't know if you can think of a few more things that were identified and put you on the spot.
Isolation was number 3. So those 3. And then I think sleeplessness was one of the top ones too. So everybody's circadian rhythms, I think that's what they're called. But everybody's sleep patterns and wake patterns were flip-flopped or done differently because of hybrid classes, or you could do homework whenever you wanted. So, yeah, I can't think of some others, but most everything else was impacted, but we did see a high percentage of students really struggling with academics in relation to their mental health because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And I know from even my own conversations with students, I feel like a big part of that loss of motivation or drive, because I think for so many people, when you start college, you have this vision in mind for what you want to do. And if you don't, that's okay too. We're all figuring it out as we go. But I think for a lot of people, it at least sets that path in motion. And I think everything being online, classes feeling somewhat unrealistic, like you're listening to lectures that are pre-recorded and just doing work on your own. I think there was a loss of connection. And I mean, for some of you, you've probably experienced that in high school as well. So I think it's a good time to check in with that goal that you have for yourself. And then what is this leading you to? because hopefully with things opening up again, it'll start to help the reality of things sink in a little bit more. And I think the energy comes when we have that purpose and that motivation again. But if you felt like school just doesn't matter during this pandemic, it makes sense. It was really hard for a lot of things to matter in the same way that they did before. It doesn't mean that's going to be the case for the future. I think we'll start to experience things very differently moving forward. So just know that if you felt unmotivated, I think we all felt unmotivated a lot of the time during this, but it'll come back.
Yeah, and I just want to piggyback on what Kyle just said there, and the idea of the uncertainty we have experienced through most of this, just kind of like not knowing certainly how we might be impacted or our family members might be impacted, or what happens next, because we actually were impacted and we're having, you know, some post-COVID symptoms, or we have a loss in our own family and there's grief and, you know, all of this stuff. But I think that uncertainty of kind of like when it would end also really added to a lot of hopelessness. And so, you know, my hope is now that things are opening back up, and again, Kyle kind of mentioned this, that it does restore some hope. We do feel like we can start planning for our future in a way that we haven't been able to. That's really been on pause for us in many ways.
Definitely. And start making those plans too. I mean, as you get familiar with the campus, maybe just say to somebody you've met, like, let's go throw rocks into the lake. Make those kind of plans for yourself.
Right. I think the college is really working to develop opportunities for students to get out and interact. And they're really amenable to changing as the guidelines or the recommendations change too. They're really right on top of it, particularly if we are all coming vaccinated. And I know that that was one of the mandates, is that you have to be vaccinated when you come back. I think that there will be a lot more opportunities than you might suspect. And we're really working hard to do that for you.
I think that brings up a good point too. I know we talked when we were preparing for this as well, but just if you are worried because you've been worried for a whole year about your safety and your health, that stuff doesn't just vanish. So if you are still experiencing some of those fears, even as maybe there's more safety and security in your environment when you're around people, it's okay to still be nervous. We're still responding. I mean, we're still in it. So I think we have to give ourselves a little bit of time to come down from it when things start to be okay. So just know that if that sense of worry and anxiety peaks its head once in a while, like, that's a normal thing to experience. I know for sure I will be experiencing that continuously. So you're not alone if that is your experience.
Right, Kyle. Like, if you want to wear a mask in a place where you're not required to wear a mask, wear a mask. You know, I have one hanging on my neck. You know, it's important to do what you need to do to feel safe and secure here, and take your time in doing so as well.